what I observed a lot was people that position themselves as spiritual fathers, but the ones doing all the work were the sons. Hey, and welcome to Ascend the Hill. I'm here today with Pastor Curtis Wall, and this is a little bit of a different version of Ascend the Hill. We do our weekly podcast that focuses on the Sunday message. Of course, you've seen us do some devotions along the way during our 21-day fast, but this will be a series of podcasts we do every few weeks, periodically, once or twice a month, that is focused on younger leaders. It's focused on the dynamic between spiritual father, spiritual son, the dynamic between lead pastor, staff pastor. And we just felt like there would be some that listening to the regular podcast or some that don't listen to that one that might have some interest. And I'll just say flat out, all of those dynamics, senior pastor, staff pastor, spiritual father, spiritual son, I'm in the crucible of learning. And so in some ways, I feel like I'll learn a little bit as we talk. But I mentioned Pastor Curtis. He is a spiritual son that the Lord has blessed me with. He's also one of our staff pastors. And so I told him, hey, Pastor Curtis, you just pick a topic and you lead the way. And he sent me a couple. You sent me a couple.
Yep.
And I said, okay, either one looks fine, but I don't want to know until we get started. So I don't know what's coming, and we're just going to talk for a little bit. So if you are a younger leader, if you are a lead pastor that is working with your staff, or feel like the Lord's called you to raise up the next generation of leaders, then hopefully this will turn into a beneficial listen for you.
Yeah. So I kind of just looked at today with a new segment of a new topic.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to walk through the journey of getting to this place where both of us are kind of sitting here.
Yeah.
And we're throwing out a word that I kind of want to dive into in this word, spiritual father, spiritual son. Of course, I grew up in church. I've kind of known what spiritual father, spiritual son, I kind of understood what that meant. But we kind of throw that around in the church. But for a lot of people that are watching, they may not even know what is a spiritual father. So my first question to you, what is a spiritual father, a healthy spiritual father?
Okay, that's a good question. So the first thing that I would say, because I did work with younger generations, is the role of a spiritual father is not to usurp, compete with, or compromise or conflict in any way the role between a biological father and son. Like I consider myself, I even told you, hey, I see you as a son. I don't need you to call me a father, because I never want to overstep your dad, who I know and who I consider a friend and somebody I admire and respect a lot. But as it pertains to ministry, as it pertains to spiritual formation, now at this point in your life, because you've invited me in and I've invited you in, this kind of mutually agreed upon relationship. My role in your life is to discern who you are, like to see your gifting, to see your talent, to see how God wired you, and then help you become that to the full. Not by nature, there's going to be some, there will be traits that you pick up out of proximity, but the goal is not a mini-me. The goal is the best Curtis Wall that Curtis Wall can be. And that's forged through me making the effort to know you and to hear you and to observe you and to speak life into you, and occasionally to say, hey, this is something that needs work. Because I'm 20 years ahead in life, 20 years ahead in ministry, I can give you my, the landmines that I stepped on, the things that my soul, I had to learn the hard way, things that I had to learn spiritually, by trial and error or by making mistakes. My hope is that I can put you on my shoulders and you won't step on the mines I stepped on, that you won't fall down the pits that I fell down along the way. And the relationship really, I think there are two probably iconic ones in the Bible, one that's New Testament, one that's Old Testament. In the New Testament, you have Paul and Timothy. which is, I mean, Paul even made it clear, like, you're my son in the faith. You know, he put that lingo on it, right? And then in the Old Testament, you have Elijah and Elisha, which was, they didn't necessarily put that lingo on it, but at the same time, it was clear that Elijah was handing a mantle. He was developing Elisha. He was preparing Elisha, and there was relational proximity. There was relational vulnerability, and so that's it in a nutshell. A spiritual father is someone that has invited a younger person into their life, and the younger person has invited the older person into their life in a mutual friendship where we are here to make each other better. And I think ultimately, just like in the realm of, you know, biological parents, natural parents, you know, there are seasons. You know, in the early years of a kid's life, the parents are. It's all about the kid. You know, it's all about raising the kid. It's all about developing the kid. You know, as life evolves, that starts turning. You know, and in the natural, like, the kid starts to support, and they become an adult, you know, and they start supporting, helping, assisting the parent, you know, and that whether that's in the family business or that's in old age, helping them come to the end well. And so within the relational dynamic, there's a give and take of, like, who's the greatest beneficiary, and that's seasonal, right? And so you and I are in a unique spot now. We could talk about it, and you can butt in at any time, because I'll just talk, right? But anyway, I'll stop there. Any thoughts or questions?
No, that's good. Because in my college years, I just being honest, like, I found myself in this moment of, I remember nights that I'd be like, God, please send me a spiritual father. I mean, it was one of my number one prayer requests. Like, God, I want someone in my life.
Why did you, what did you want out of that? Why did you have that cry in you?
Honestly, it was like, I had a great father growing up.
Yes.
He is a phenomenal father. And there was a role that he played in my maturation that, like, he was there with accountability, correction. It was somebody that I could look up to, that I worked side by side.
Yes.
And I think whenever I went to college, I was really hungry for that.
Yeah.
And of course, I sat underneath your ministry every summer and every once in a while throughout the year. But to me, I was like, I want something like that almost at least weekly. Something I can work with it. So that was the kind of the desperation in me. I was like, God, I want something like this. So of course, years went by, and of course, as I looked across, like, hey, God, you're not sending me anybody.
Right.
Like, what's going on? And I would ask these questions. And the number one question that I asked myself, and I asked God, like, how do I get a spiritual father? So what you just said, a spiritual father, is I hope and I pray that everybody that's watching wants a spiritual father or a spiritual mother.
Yeah.
Like, if someone
100%.
that wants that, how do you get one? Like, it's kind of like getting a father again, but how do you get a spiritual father?
Well, I think, you know, the word spiritual is a very important part of it. And the reason I say that is I think the Lord leads us to people. I think he knits us to people. I think he brings that person into our life. And I feel like it's like, you know it when you know it. There is this element of, you know, hey, I see that person that's gifted or talented, or I respect and admire from afar. And some people are like, let me go, like, hunt that person down and see if I can get attention from them. But that from afar like that is more, it's your focus more on either the yield of their life, the fruit of their life, what they produce, what they've accomplished, the gifting that's on them, or the anointing that you sense on them. But that is a really surface level thing, like to find yourself in proximity to somebody that the Lord wants to pour into you. And it's a spiritual thing, and it's kind of something that you know, and you feel like this is what the Lord has established for me. And so the how is, I think, what you did. Like, God, I know I need this in my life. And for you especially, because, hey, I've got a call to preach. I've got a call to lead in church. So for you especially, that is it's a very important need.
Yeah.
You know, you need somebody and then you have to ask yourself along the way, like, why am I asking for this? Am I asking this because I'm insecure and I need validation? Or, am I asking this because I want to grow? Like, I want to know that I'm on the right path. I want somebody to speak into my life and have full access.
Mhm.
And I think even in my younger years, the desire for somebody like that in my life was probably fueled more by insecurity. So I kind of walked around like, "Will you be my daddy?"
Mhm.
It's just like this thing of like, well, maybe that person's it, and maybe that. And I would try to engage in different relationships, but they wouldn't take.
Wow. Yeah.
But I had somebody in my life that was there when I was a teenager that was very much a spiritual
Mhm.
father to me, but I had such insecurity in me. It's like, well, I'm looking here, here, and here,
Yeah.
and as the insecurity quelled, it's like, okay, now I can see it better. Like I can understand what this means for me. And then on top of that, like a true father, like does silence the insecurity.
Mhm.
Like your life connected to theirs silences the insecurity. That's what a father does in general.
Yeah.
Is they, by the nature of who they are, their affirmation, their belief in you, their voice to you, insecurity dies in us. So
Yeah,
anyway.
even you going ahead and saying that, I kind of asking the question was like, I'm ready for a spiritual father in that point in my life.
Yeah.
I read through the book of Proverbs, and one of the things that it says, a wise person welcomes accountability and
Yes.
correction. And I asked myself, was I open to correction?
Right.
Was my heart ready for accountability? So maybe the Lord's like, hey, you need to grow up a little bit. You need to mature before you have someone that's going to bring correction and
Right.
accountability.
I,
So
I remember I remember a young Pastor Curtis that didn't that he would get a little defensive.
a little, I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea.
But dude, you're a different Curtis
Yeah,
today, and I see that maturity in you. Like I see
yeah.
that readiness, and on the flip side, if you're not careful, there are people that are on a bit of an ego trip, a power
Mm,
trip. They want to be a spiritual father because they want to cut on somebody. They
mm,
they want to correct. They want somebody to lord over. They have their own insecurities, and so somebody that nips at their heels, and somebody that hangs on every word that comes from their mouth
yeah.
feeds their insecurity, and so you have to find the type of person that's already secure. They're not dealing with all
Yeah.
that stuff, because you say, "Hey, I want somebody to correct me," and that's true. That's a really important
Mhm.
part of that relationship, but like that shouldn't be like an eager part
Mhm.
of the relationship with
Wow.
a
Yeah.
person that's the spiritual. That shouldn't be something that you're just like, well,
Mhm.
I can't wait to get them,
Yeah.
And of course, we laugh a lot about our camp
Yeah.
years and working together at camp, and it's such a like high intensity
Mhm.
crucible, of an environment that a lot of the reprimands were very just they weren't very well thought out, right? Okay. If I appreciate all the grace you've given me. They weren't super calculated. They were very reactionary a lot of the time. But now at this
Yeah.
point in your life, it's like I don't want to live reactionary. I want to be proactive.
Yeah.
And so if there is some course correction, it's not from this like, what are you doing?
Mhm.
It's from the okay, I want to help you like see this, and I
Mhm.
want to help you come through this to be the better version of yourself. And so I say that because like I've been in some environments where the spiritual father lingo was so like thrown
Mm.
around, and I didn't love what I saw.
Wow. Yeah.
I didn't like the amount of insecurity that that saturated the relationships. I didn't like all the mimicry. I
Wow.
didn't.
Yeah.
There was a lot that I didn't like, and I walked away saying, I know that there's this mantle on me to invest in younger leaders to be that for them. I have a deep, deep desire. It's one of the reasons we're doing the school of ministry,
Mhm.
is because like I feel that mantle on my life. I feel like God made me a father.
Mhm.
I love being a father to my kids. Like I feel like He built me for that.
Mm.
Um, but I for years was pretty reluctant to call myself that to
Wow.
somebody.
Yeah.
Even when you came here, I left you a post-it note
Yeah.
of like, even with that, it was very tentative
Wow. Yeah.
of like even using that language because like I didn't want it to be an ego trip. I didn't want it to be about me. I didn't want it to be about, you know, all of the things that I saw that I didn't feel like were super healthy.
Yeah. And you kind of brought up another question of mine is like, as a spiritual son that was looking for a spiritual father, to not step into a bad relationship with a spiritual father, what should a spiritual son or someone that's looking for that relationship be looking for in a spiritual father?
Oh, super, super good question. I think you have to look past the stage for
Wow.
starters, and
Wow.
that's in the ministry context. I think we just I alluded to it before. We have a tendency to look at gifting, anointing, fruit,
Hmm.
and as in like success, and say I want to be like that. And the problem is you don't actually know the character of the person. You don't know the
Hmm.
integrity of the person. You don't know how they're wired. And so I think you need to watch a person.
Wow.
You
Yeah.
know, I think you need to observe who they are and see who they are. But you also need to be attentive to who throws their cloak over you. That
Hmm.
goes to the Elijah Elisha
Yeah.
dynamic. That relationship was really unique in the sense that Elijah knew, like, I've got to hand the mantle to somebody else. Like, my time's coming to an end. So he found Elisha. He saw whatever he saw in Elisha is like, there's something in
Hmm.
this guy, this younger leader that I want to pour. Like, there was a spiritual connection.
Yeah.
And Elijah proactively went and threw his cloak on him.
Yeah.
Like, he said, I see something in you. And so that's a start there. Like, who has said, I see something in you?
Hmm.
Who is, and now, okay, is this somebody that I want to help me get to what they see?
Yeah.
Do they see me well? Do they see me accurately? Um, of course, a lot of it again is spiritual.
Hmm.
You know, I, um, there's a guy, Sam Curtis. I don't know if he'll listen to this or not. I mean, the first time I saw Sam Curtis, he was 18 years old. He was at youth camp with a church that wasn't even his church.
Hmm.
But the first time I saw him, it was like, there's something on him. And I
Yeah.
feel drawn to it.
Wow.
Like, I hadn't
Yeah.
had a conversation with him. It was like the Lord saying, that's a young man that you need to connect with. And it was very spirit led. It was just very like inner witness of the Holy Spirit. And I mean, and now today, like, I love Sam. We don't talk as much. He's youth pastor and he's doing ministry at a great church, raising a family, all of that. But Sam knows I love him.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I married him and his wife. I
Yeah.
officiated their wedding,
Yeah.
So I use him as an example because it was like that.
Yeah. So you keep on using this term that you saw something
Yeah.
in someone. You're a pastor of a larger church, and you can't spiritual father everybody.
No.
So my question to you is, what are you looking for in a spiritual son? What are some things that I can do, or somebody out there you can be attentive in our own life
Yeah.
of understanding? Okay, this is what a healthy spiritual father is looking for in me before anything. So,
I think humility,
mm,
like pliability, teachability. Those are things that really matter. I mean, there's been younger people that I've been drawn to through the years,
mhm,
but it's like after a while, we keep having the same situation. We keep having the same conversation. And it's like, you're not teaching me. You're not teachable. And it's not that you'd like throw in the towel with them. It's like, hey, I'm still here. Like, until you're ready to be taught, until
mhm.
you're ready, and not that I know everything, but until you're ready to receive, like, we're just going to keep banging our heads against the wall.
Yeah.
Another thing that's really important is to not try to shape the narrative.
Mhm.
Like, when you're a son, I mean, some of them might be listening here, and I've had this conversation of like, I need you to trust me that I'm gonna love you,
Wow. Yeah.
even like though you're not perfect,
Mm,
and don't try to like shape what I think of you. Let's be honest.
mm,
Don't hide things. And it's not like you're hiding sin, but it's like hiding struggles, hiding fears, hiding weaknesses. Like, you don't have to do that. Like, the whole point of me being
wow.
in your life is because like I'm here for those things. So don't hide them. And if
Yeah.
you're hiding them, the thing is, like, I probably see them, like, by the Spirit, just by years of experience. I probably see them. I probably see that issue you're wrestling with. But until you don't, quit trying to shape the narrative
Wow.
and
Yeah.
make me think you're a certain way and come to me and say, yeah, this is it. I'm a little bit handcuffed to work with you.
Wow, yeah.
And it's, again, not out of a lack of desire. It is just, you can only help to the degree somebody will allow you.
Yeah.
You can only speak to the depth that somebody will permit you. And again, that is, I think, a part of being a healthy father is the gentleness, the patience to not take more than you're given.
Yeah.
To not push farther than you're permitted. I'm going to let you decide just how deep we're going to go.
Wow.
Right. And so those are things that I think matter a lot.
Yeah. We were talking a couple weeks ago, and just kind of talking on this topic of Elijah and Elisha,
Yeah.
and how that one pursued that relationship,
Yeah.
and kind of talking about that dynamic. But you also referenced Paul and Timothy,
Yeah.
and I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about them, and just kind of, it's a very broad question.
Okay, so do we want to shelf Elijah and Elisha for a moment?
Yeah, just for a moment,
because there is something I want to talk about there. So yeah, let's hear Paul and Timothy.
I was just going to ask you, what is your takeaway from their relationship? We've talked a lot about Elijah and Elisha, but what's your takeaway from Paul and Timothy?
There's a lot of affection.
Wow.
We can't read Timothy's words. We're reading Paul's word, but they're dripping with affection. Mm. They're dripping with a care for Timothy in the ministry, but also just a care for his heart. Wow. And to me, that's if the father role has to be dripping with affection. Like there has to be this care for you as a whole person. Yeah. He's telling Timothy how to deal with some emotions. He's telling him how to deal with some health issues. Like he's all the way around trying to speak into his life, and he's speaking confidence into Timothy. He's not tearing him down. He's speaking confidence. Hey, remember whenever all the hands were laid on you and spiritual gifts were imparted? That's in you, bro. Fan it to flame. Wow. Like there's stuff in there. Like make it happen. Preach the word. Be bold. Be confident. Yeah. Hey, don't get distracted in all that nonsense over there. Don't get caught up in all of the bickering and the complaining that everybody's doing. Like you're above that, man. Yeah. Like you're better than that. Lead them out of that. So there's a lot of just confidence building that you see in those texts. And then of course there is like ministry wisdom. Hey, here's how you need to structure your leadership. Like here's how you need to set up the church when it comes to deacons, elders. So you see some of the like more systematic ministry training. Yeah. And you also see the care for the whole of the person, and you see that speaking to the soul and spirit of like, bro, it's on you, it's in you, go for it. Mm. So that's a really cool relationship. Yeah,
I love it. I've actually been reading through 1st and 2nd Timothy, and I feel like me and Timothy relate on one part of our immaturity. It's over and over. He writes to him. He's like, "Hey, don't argue with things that don't matter." It's like over and over. I'm like, I feel you, bro. Well, we've both been there.
And it was probably a little Timothy, and it was certainly probably the times. I mean, we're in those kind of times where everybody argues over everything. And so, but I 100, again, I remember some concession stand moments at camp, and it's like, hey, bud, I just need you to hear me. I don't need you. I don't need you to respond right now.
Yeah. No, been there, done that. Me and him are very alike.
Hey, I love that though. That's part of why you're here.
Yeah.
Part of why you're here is because, of that side of you too, that you were confident and that you were like, you had some fight to you. I liked the fight, and I liked that part of you. I didn't dislike that part of you. It's about channeling it. I mean, I'm parenting kids, and like I see things in my daughter that it's like, there's this tenacity in her. There's this like edge, that she can have of just like, don't mess with me. Yeah. And maybe I shouldn't be telling that to people. She's at the point in life where she doesn't want me talking about her and stuff like this, but she will never hear this. So nobody say anything to her. But it's like, I love that about her. How do I help her for that to lead her into great things and not be a hindrance? Yeah. And it's the same with you. It's like, there's stuff that I don't want you to lose. I just want it honed.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said you had a thought on Elijah and Elisha.
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, we talked about this over Velvet Tacos, a couple of weeks ago. Going back to struggles I had, with what I'd seen and experienced with all the spiritual father lingo, what I observed a lot was people that position themselves as spiritual fathers, but the ones doing all the work were the sons. Like they were the ones that had to do all of the like trying to connect, and they may or may not make a connection. They may or may not be able to get the person on the phone. They may or, it was very one-sided in the pursuit. And so I really developed this, sense, like when I said that like Elijah initiated the relationship, that became a really big deal to me of Elijah started this, like it's not all on the son. Right. But now I'm in a role, and we've talked about this where, I mean, I've just got a lot going.
Yeah.
I have a lot of things happening around me all the time, and I have a lot of pulling. And like what happened with Elijah and Elisha is he threw the cloak on him. Elisha kind of had to process what that means for his family dynamic. He burned the ox and all the stuff.
Yeah.
And so then they go on this journey together, and Elijah's like, hey, I'm gonna go over there. How about you stay here? And Elisha's like, no, bro, you ain't gonna shake me.
Yeah.
Like I'm going where you go.
Yeah.
And so there is a value in the pursuit of that son saying, wherever you go, I'm going to go. Like I'm going to be right on your trail. Like I'm coming after you. And there is that need. That's it's a give and take relationship of like the son has to say, and I even have shared like, hey, I need you to understand that like I love you and I have time for you. But like, I got a lot going, and I get to the end of my day, and I mean, from the moment I walked in the building, from the moment I walked into the moment I left, I didn't have a second to myself, or except like 20 minutes eating lunch, and so I just want to invite you to invite you to press in, and if I don't have time, I'll tell you, but that like that's just in a moment. That's not a statement about our life. And so for any son, or aspiring son or somebody looking, like there is a degree of press that you have to do out of the grace of knowing that the person that you're reaching out to, they have a lot going.
Yeah.
They have a family. They have all the pressures. And so they probably want you in their sphere with some regularity, but it's like, how do I schedule that?
Yeah.
So just break in.
Yeah. And that kind of comes back to the whole thing of like me laying on the floor at my college years of just being like, God, send me somebody. And it kind of goes to tell you, like everybody that's a young leader, it requires you some work too. You're not always going to have a father that comes and finds you and picks you out of the crowd and puts your arm around you. You might have that, but it's going to require a little bit of work.
Yeah.
And so many times we want that father to do all the work for us. Oh, you're supposed to father me.
Yeah.
No, this is a spiritual father.
Yeah.
And you're maturing. You're not young anymore. You're not going to be spoon fed. It's time for you to grow up a little bit. And kind of, it's a two-sided conversation. I actually heard another pastor say this. He said, I was so desperate to get in my lead pastor's life. He went to the admin and said, hey, whenever they go to the airport, sign me up. I'll drive them every single time.
Awesome.
So it kind of told me, I was like, kind of opened my eyes of like, hey, I need to find ways to get in your life.
Yeah.
And you've kind of told me your schedule, and it's not, you've kind of put the ball in my court, so to speak. So kind of speak to that as we wrap up, like to spiritual sons, like what's some ways like practically that we can step into spiritual sonship?
Man, I don't even know if I know how to answer that question. You probably could answer it better. I think that what you just said was a great nugget. Like, hey, I'm gonna be intentional about pursuing this relationship, and I'm gonna be, when I say intentional, like I'm gonna know what's going on with you and figure out how to get in on that, how to squeeze in on that, and and again, I come back to just what your heart posture is. The right heart posture changes the way somebody interacts with you. You were, and I know we need to start wrapping up. And I don't want to like overly dissect our relationship. People might not care, but you were that very confident, strong person. And I remember when we were talking about, hey, I'm getting done with college, I'm about to go in ministry, and we were talking about which way you should go, and there were a couple of scenarios at play, and like I kind of was like, man, I think you should try this one over here, and you're like, well, I'm going to go this one, and I, what that told me is like this man wants to forge his own path. Like he wants to make his own way. And so once again, like I love that, you know, I love seeing that. And so, but when you started needing to have conversations about like what you felt the Lord doing in your life next, you know, I remember sitting at a table in the cafeteria at camp and us having a talk about what your future looked like. You kind of came to the table, if you will, and said, hey, I'm ready for you to give me some insight, you know, and that, man, I mean, this is like, people like being an expert, you know, and I say that, you know, kind of jokingly, but like if you as a spiritual son, daughter, if you as a son, a younger person, go to an older leader and say, hey, I want some insight. Bro, everybody loves to be an expert. You're going to open their heart up to you. You know, they're going to say like, well, you want to hear what I got to say? You see something in me, like, cause that's like, it ain't all one sided. Like you got to pick me. Like you see something in me that you want, like that you think will help you, man, I'm here for it. Yeah. So anyway, do you got anything else? We're about to be done.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's just the door is only going to open as wide as I open it for our relationship. I've got to come to you and honestly just be honest and vulnerable and tell you my expectations. We've sat so many times. I'm like, hey, I want you to pour into my life. But if you're not telling that spiritual father exactly that, hey, I want you to pour in my life, they're not going to walk through a door you haven't opened for them.
So. And on the flip side, it can't be all on my terms. Like I've got to make the effort and I have to be like intentional as well. I don't want to let the older leader off the hook. Like we have to be intentional as well. Yeah. Because if not, you will crush the person's soul. Like you'll hurt their soul because they'll become insecure. Yeah. They're insecure. You'll start creating things that you were meant to heal and help. Yeah. So anyway, we could talk forever about this. Again, I don't even know how many times, what was the frequency we said we were going to do this? Every other week. Yeah. So we'll do these every other week. If you come across it and you're a ministry leader, younger or older, and you find this particular Ascend the Hill podcast, have we decided on the addendum, like what we're going to call it? It'll be like Ascend the Hill, ... something. We'll kind of tweak the lingo a little bit. Yeah. But pass it along, and we'll do it again in a couple of weeks.
I look forward to it.